What's up, everybody? This is your boy, Dr. L. I want to come up here and drop another episode here. And this is a video that I saw when I was about to um, review one of my old videos, make sure I'm doing everything to the best of my abilities. So I came across this young lady who I think probably just started a channel, Amanda Claypool. She's got a low sub count, but anyway, it popped up. And this is called American Women Are Giving Up on Marriage. And in this video, she's going to state that she herself is a feminist. And I wanted to highlight her, and she kind of put her face down here at the bottom here. It's difficult to see her, but I wanted to highlight her in the commentary that she is giving. So before we continue on with this, you know what to do. Hit the like button on my channel. I'm going to give her a like right now. I can't see it, but I did give her a like. I appreciated the work that she's done because we're looking at so many times we're looking at what men are doing or how men are failing. And this particular young lady is addressing the elephant in the room, and she's going to address how she gave up a lot in order to and moved from one place to another in order to find love. So let's get into it. This is going to be her talking for the vast majority of it. There may be an echo because I got two of her pains playing, so we'll see how it goes.
This piece in the Wall Street Journal went viral back in March, and it talks about why American women are giving up on marriage. I don't have a Wall Street Journal subscription. It's like $100+ a year, and I just don't think the Wall Street Journal is worth it. So I'm going to dive into an interview that the author of that article participated on NPR.
I don't think Wall Street Journal is worth the $100 a year either. I mean, it's a fairly decent magazine, but I don't think it's worth that. But so the name of the article she's going to read is Marriage Worth It? Single Women Say No. And this, again, was an NPR article, and I think they did a podcast as well. And then as NPR does, they will do the breakdown of it as well. So here we go.
I like to look at folks' LinkedIn to get a sense of who they are and what they're bringing to conversations like this. So the author of that piece is Rachel Wolf. She studied journalism at Northwestern and has worked at the Wall Street Journal for the past few years. Brittany Luce is the host on NPR. She went to Howard University and has been in podcast world for several years. And the last guest is Minda Reeves, but she goes by Minda Honey in the podcast interview. Looks like she's based in Philly, and she has degrees from University of Louisville, and University of California, Riverside. So that they come from a diverse area in the country.
Try to make some adjustments here. Hold on a second here. Make sure that this fits. All right. All right, made some adjustments there. Okay, continue on with this.
But I don't know that they're going to bring too much diversity to this this interview. Right away, it's about whether or not marriage is worth it and what single women have to say. But they also talk about men in this piece. Right off the get-go, the host asks a question: what does it mean that men increasingly want to get married and women don't?
So that's been some surveys that have come out. Men want to get married, women don't, because women have kind of leveled up, and I think it was a feminist who said this. Now become the men that they want to marry, so they don't think that they need to do it. They don't want to do it. All that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit, and I think the highlights in the video are hers, the yellow highlights there, but I'm going to speed this up a little bit so we can kind of get through this. I am going to claim fair use. I know that she's a new YouTuber. I am doing a reaction to her. It seems as if she's new, and I do appreciate this piece that she did. I am going to speed this up just a tad. Let's try at 1.5 speed, and that's too fast. I'll slow it down.
It's really hard to have a conversation about men if men don't have a seat at the table, and this is pretty common where women explain how men feel and what they're bringing to relationships, and they're never invited to the conversation. And I find this so ironic because when I lived in DC, there's this thing called panels where, especially in foreign policy think tanks, there's a lot of panels that only included men, and all the women freaked out and they were like, oh, we need to have a more diversity on the panels with women. But now that women have the upper hand in culture, you can notice this if you watch, CNN or MSNBC. If you watch any like mainstream media channel, you'll notice this. There's women panels.
But here she is admitting that the women have an upper hand in these panels.
Women panels, I don't know what you want to call it. Women are dominating the panels now. Women are dominating the
dominating panels, dominating conversation, dominating the culture, as he just said.
Conversation. They're not inviting men in, and so it's hard for men to actually get a little bit in edgewise to like have equity in the conversations that they are privy to, which is just so ironic. And no wonder why the Democrats are spending so much money on trying to figure out men, because they literally don't talk to them. So they talked about this.
Yeah, she's talking about they just spent $20 million to try to talk to men, try to figure out where they're coming from. They're not really interested.
And how women are kind of opting out. They're not going down the route of getting married anymore. They're investing more in themselves and their careers, friendships, yada yada yada. Right off the bat, God, I love these. Right off the bat, one of the panelists admits that she is not married. So I cannot take relationship advice from anyone who is not married. That's like taking financial advice from someone who doesn't have any positive gains in the stock market. Like
I'm gonna start to jump on the same bandwagon. It's getting a little annoying, all these different life coaches. And listen, I have a life coach certificate. I also have a relationship certificate, and I'm trying not to give marital advice or relationship advice. I'm just talking about what the problems are. I talk about what the problems are concerning what men are seeing, the problems with marriage in and of itself, and why men don't want to get married or why they are hesitant to do it. And there's my Instagram is now being flooded with this type of all these different gurus and stuff who don't have relationships. And it's really getting kind of frustrating. And it's becoming a business in and of itself. And again, I'm going to talk about what I did wrong so other people can't do it. I'm going to talk about other people won't make the mistakes that I made. I'm also going to talk about, or also have been talking about, why men are hesitant to enter into relationships and all that. So I can share her frustration about that. It's getting a little annoying right now.
Wouldn't do that. So I don't know why anyone would take any advice this individual has to say. So I take what she says with a grain of salt. She says that she is not necessarily single by choice, but she's single due to a lack of choices, and that she's not willing to get married at the expense of her own happiness. So a couple thoughts here. Women are not willing to meet men halfway. They're not willing to change their expectations. And I'm not saying that they should settle, but I'm also saying they should settle. So let me give you a corollary here. So I wanted to go to Harvard. Harvard was my dream school. I had no shot in going to Harvard. I'm a poor working class, girl from upstate New York. There was no way in hell I was ever going to go to Harvard. Did that stop me from applying? No. Did that stop me from thinking maybe someday I could go? No, absolutely not. But I had to settle, okay? I had to settle and go to a different university. I didn't get to go to the university I wanted to go to. And there are myriad reasons why I was never going to get into Harvard. I didn't have the SAT scores, of course. I was never going to get those SAT scores. I couldn't afford tutoring, all that kind of stuff. I didn't check all the right boxes, as we're starting to see come out now, especially with some of the affirmative action stuff that's gone through the Supreme Court, and just conversations about diversity and equity and inclusion. Harvard isn't really as diverse as people think it is, or they select people who check certain boxes and give the appearance of diversity, but they're not actually as diverse as they want you to think they are. They're more in favor of wealthy people. So maybe if I had a last name like, I don't know, if I was Bill Gates' kid or a Vanderbilt or Jeff Bezos' kid, I don't know, maybe I would have gotten in, but I didn't. Okay, so I had to settle. And
yeah, well, they attacked DEI, affirmative action, etc., but they did not attack legacy persons, and those are the vast majority of people who get in. And we all know that DEI has benefited white women in particular. It's interesting that she's talked about her SAT scores. We all know that people go through this. And of course, people, a lot of times, are people who get higher SAT scores have tutors and all this kind of stuff, right? Some of it is actual raw natural talent, and a lot of it is just tailoring to the test and with tutors, etc. So she didn't have all that. But again, she's making this analogy. And again, ladies don't want to settle because they don't have to. I got a job, I got a career, and I don't want to settle. But she's going to explain all this, and she's done a fantastic job on explaining this.
This is going to happen throughout life. My dream job was to work for the CIA. I came very close. I was in the recruitment process. I had someone on the inside who was pulling my resume. I studied Arabic in the Middle East, and I lived there. I was a great student. I checked all the right boxes. One of my mentors in college was a former director of one of the big 3-letter intel agencies in DC. I had a watertight resume, and it still wasn't good enough. And there are, again, different reasons. The timing wasn't right. There's issues. This happens all the time in Washington where agencies will overhire based on expectations in the budget that change from year to year. And so they'll often overhire and then they have to withdraw job offers and just a variety of things, right? And so I had to settle. I had to take a job in defense contracting. I couldn't just sit and whine and complain because I didn't get into my dream school and I didn't get into my dream job, right? Like, it's called life happens and things don't always go to plan and you have to make adjustments and trade-offs. And this is an example. I'm not saying that you should settle for someone whose values are misaligned with you, but you have to be willing to move your expectations because that's what marriage is. Marriage is all about compromise. You know, you're creating a relationship between two independent, sovereign people with agency and opinions and consciousness of their own. And you have to find a middle ground, and the relationship you create is something that is outside of both of you, right? But you are both participating in it. It's no different than starting a business, right? Think of it like, well, I mean, it is different, but think of starting a business as an example, right? Like you have different founders who come in and start a business. Your goals, your objectives, your purpose is the same. You're trying to get this business off the ground, maybe get acquired, whatever, okay? But if you have someone in your business who only thinks they're going to work 8 hours a day and you have everyone else in the business who is going to put in 16 to 18-hour days getting it off the ground as fast as possible, I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be conflict in that business between the person who's not putting in their full effort, right? There's no equality in that relationship. So you have to be willing to find people and partners and relationships with people whose values align with you. And it's not just romantic relationships, friendships, all sorts of things, right? But the fact that this woman says right here, but am I willing to get married at the expense of my happiness? Absolutely not. It tells you right there what the mindset is of modern women. It's just
we talked about this, right? We went over Asian women. They're not willing to settle. They want to be happy. Their happiness means everything. American women, and now here's a podcast that she's highlighting in which transcripts are available. I couldn't think of that term before, transcripts. And now she's elaborating that, you know, they're saying it out loud. They don't want to settle, and their happiness means more than anything else.
Just complete narcissism. Like the world revolves around them. Everything is about their happiness, which is subjective. And let's be honest here, like happiness isn't the goal. Read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Like read some actual deep stuff and you'll realize it's not about happiness. I'll tell you right now, when Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp, he did not care about his happiness. Okay? Like we need to get past this notion of happiness. It's so it's sophomoric and it is quite juvenile. It's quite juvenile. The world is not about happiness. It's about being good. It's about seeking out truth and knowledge, and it's about pursuing justice, and there's dignity and moral obligations and responsibility and accountability, and it's not always happiness, okay? I'm a runner. I run marathons. Am I happy running marathons all the time? Absolutely not. I'm overcoming an injury right now, and it's not fun. But do I still do it? Is there reasons why I pursue this thing that is really difficult? Absolutely. So it's not always about happiness. Women need to get this whole happiness thing outside of, like, they just need to...
Pursuing things that are difficult. So she's running marathons, not happy with herself all the time, but there's a greater goal in mind. Greater goal, greater good in mind. Keep that in mind. That's not, this is a missing component of modern day life.
Get rid of it. It's so stupid. They talk about how in a survey from AEI, which is a conservative think tank, ironic to comment about that here, but that survey said fully half of college-educated women blame their singlehood largely on an inability to find someone who meets their expectations. Again, it's not a problem that they can't find. It's not a problem that the relationships they want exist, but they have to be willing to meet men halfway, and they're not willing to do so. So until they change their expectations and come back to reality, women are not going to have relationships. And so this is something that isn't really talked about. It's not, I don't know that guys are aware of this, but this is part of girl culture that creates like an echo chamber and a negative feedback loop that reinforces this idea of singlehood and like there's power in it and you're a good girl boss if you like pursue your happiness and your self-interest. So they talk about, we're seeing people touting their boy sober and off the market status on TikTok. We're really seeing a focus on self-improvement, friendship, ability to find happiness on your own. There's like pride in creating an independent life and not settling. So women like to project onto the world around them and onto other women expectations about life so that they feel confident in their choices. And if they're a bad choice, they're suffering in misery with other women. So like the fat positivity and the body positivity movement is a perfect example of this. So the whole thing is not to accept fat people. Like objectively, morbidly obese people are not attractive. Like you can see them wearing swimsuits and in tight clothes, just scroll through YouTube, scroll through TikTok, whatever. Objectively,
I'm glad she's she's gonna take a lot of heat for this. She's gonna take a lot of heat for this. But and she's gonna say in this video that she's a former feminist. So she was probably on this train at some point and said, you know what, let me off at the next stop because this is on his way to Crazyville here.
Morbid obesity period is just not attractive. It tells me you don't respect yourself, you don't respect others because you clearly like are going to have people take care of you, especially if you're on like the shows like My 600-Pound Life. And then you expect in that state where you don't respect yourself, you're abusing your body, right? You expect in that state that other people need to accept you. And it's this way that women project into the culture their demands and expectations, and they try to get other women along with them. So it normalizes their experience, it makes them feel better, and it makes it so they don't have to take accountability for their actions, right? So
that what she just brought up is just phenomenal, right? So, not only that, but we can think of so many other things where, ladies are pushing these ideas out into the ether that everybody else has to swallow. We can think about these different movements, the Autobots and Decepticon movements. We can think about all these type of movements, right? Not just fat shaming and other things, but all these other movements out here, and people just, we got to go along with it, right? And this is a big problem that's going on in college campuses. I've covered that story before. Issues in college campuses where if we don't like the speaker, what they stand for, we want to shut them down and completely ignore what they have to say, rather than actually listen to them and come to some type of thoughtful conclusion about whatever their opinion is. We don't want to do that. Just shut them down.
If you have everyone on TikTok talking about how great their life is and they're creating an independent life and they're boy sober and blah, 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 the people who started this trend, the people who are like deep into this, they can feel better about themselves. And I say this because the one of the women here, the one who's not married, she just turned 40, right? So you're seeing the shift, especially of elder millennials who are getting older. They're have no prospects for finding a husband. They're not willing to change their expectations, and their biological clock has ticked down. Some may have frozen their eggs, but let's be real here, that is a great science experiment, and who knows if those eggs will actually be viable. So they want company, and misery likes company, right? So that's what all of this. They're engineering social media and creating all of these positivity movements so that they can find company in misery when they get older, and they realize at some point, like, the party is over. Like the happiness party, the self-fulfillment, the selfishness, the narcissism, at some point, you're not going to find fulfillment in that anymore. And these women are going to have completely empty lives devoid of meaning and purpose. And if they don't feel it now with all of their friends and other women having children, they will definitely feel it in their 60s and 70s when they don't have grandkids, when they're all alone, no one wants to hang out with them. And then obviously on their deathbed, when there's no one that's going to, be there. It's great. Friendships are wonderful. If you have a best friend who will be at your funeral, that's great. Your girl squad that you go and get brunch with, they're not going to be there. They're not going to be there, okay?
They don't care about that. They don't care. They don't care about that one bit. They do not care about that. Let me change the audio here. Excuse me, the video. Video is on high resolution here, so I don't know. But they don't care. They don't care. They don't care anything about that. They do not care anything about that. They do not care about who's going to be there on their deathbed. They want to have fun now. They want the bag now. They want to travel now. They want to buy whatever their Birkin bags. They don't care anything about the deathbed. They didn't care when Kevin Samuels said it. They don't care now. They don't care. It's not a convincing argument to them. Sorry to say, it's just not a convincing argument.
Unless you've had a relationship for someone for a long period of time, your coworkers, the people you go to Soul Cycle with, the girls you go out with on the weekend, they are not going to they're not going to be at your funeral. And it's just like a fact of life. Like as life changes, friendships wane, things change. Like I had a group of girls I worked with when I was in DC, and we were I wouldn't say we were best friends, we were obviously close and we hung out and socialized, but when I left my career, those relationships died out. And, all of us now live in different areas, some in different countries. Do I still consider these people friends? Sure. Could we go to coffee tomorrow and pick up where we left off? Absolutely. Are they going to be at my funeral? No. And so we need to get past these superficial relationships and prioritizing superficial relationships, friendship and people you share hobbies with. I'm sorry, but the girl you play pickleball with is not going to be at your funeral. She is not going to be the shoulder to cry on when times get tough and you need a friend. Your family is going to be there. That's what matters most. Family. Historically, family has always gotten people through hard times. It's not all the superficial nonsense. Okay. Wolf, who is the author of the Wall Street Journal piece, she says,
they don't care. She made a good argument, but they don't care. It's about family, but they don't care.
One of her sources said that it's the only thing you can put.
Also, this idea of happiness, right? We covered this recently. This idea of happiness is also on a scale that isn't the same for each individual. So the way that men measure happiness, the way that women measure happiness, what makes you happy at this particular point in time, all that matters, right? So this idea that single women are are happier versus married women, and married men are happier versus unmarried men, right? It's about time and perspective and plot in life, and what the measures are, the barometers are that people have for happiness. It's all subjective to that. So, what I consider to be a great moment in my life, what makes me happy, maybe I label that as an 8, or someone else would label that as a 6. They would still consider it to be happy, but are they ecstatic about it, etc. So that's what makes all that survey type of information sort of subjective. And also, when you look at one of the studies that I looked at, when it talked about women who are happier, particularly when they're older, is because they've had fulfilled lives. A lot of times they may have been divorced, but they have children around them, grandchildren around them. So those added components are what helps to build up their own particular levels of happiness. So it's not just about the women are just happy being in this just because they're older and single. It's because they're older, single, they've had experiences, they have children, they have grandchildren, etc. Versus someone who doesn't have any of that.
10,000 hours into at the end and end up right where you started. I'm going to cover her in a minute because this girl has also gone viral. She was interviewed in the original piece, and I think it's more of a problem of priorities, not the amount of time. This is interesting. So this is obviously, I'm assuming all of these, based on what they're talking about, where they live, their educations, all these women ascribe to the feminist narrative. And so it's funny that women claim still to this day that they are underpaid, that there's a wage gap, but they're simultaneously claiming that women are doing well financially, and so they don't need men, they don't need relationships, and they're not willing to settle for something that they think is going to hold them back. And then the question here is, hold you back from what? Hold you back from what? Like, okay, let's say you're the epic girl boss, you start your job, you rise up the ranks, you become a VP or an executive at a company, you start your company, maybe you're the chick who started Bumble, right? Whitney Wolford. Maybe you start Bumble. Okay, then what? What happens when you reach the top? And if you want to know what this looks like, I would study the lives of folks like Anthony Bourdain or Robin Williams or Kate Spade. The outcome was the same for them, and there's a reason for that. You can look into Hollywood and celebrity culture in particular, and you reach an apex in your career, you reach the top, and there is nowhere left for you to go. So I don't know what these women think that men are going to hold them back from, because I don't know that the mountain that they're climbing is actually worth it. And they think they're achieving this great success, but for what? For whom? It doesn't matter. If you're climbing it alone, it doesn't matter. For what? The likes on social media? The attention on TikTok? I think that's what this is all about. It's all about for these vanity metrics. But look at some of the celebrities I mentioned, and you'll see there's a common thread in all of their lives. They reached a point, they could not go further. It was isolating, it was lonely, and it did not end well for them. And I think this is a warning for people who put success above everything else in their lives.
That's the American way.
So one of the reasons...
That's the American way. Success above everything. Individualism above everything, right? You got to be bifurcated, got to be separated, got to be atomized, right?
Like this, the narrator, host person talks about how part of the reason why for many women dating is just not working is because it's returned to old school gender roles. Like, why are these old school gender roles making a resurgence in today's dating scene? Well, I will tell you why. It's a reaction to the political and the cultural zeitgeist we're in. You have a culture that tells us that biology isn't real, that men and women are not unique, and that this is the thing that people don't understand. So women don't understand how special we are. And this is something I've been grappling with. Like, I still don't understand. Like, because of feminism, I've been trying to move myself up to the level of men, to be equal to men. And what women don't realize is we're not moving ourselves up, we're moving ourselves down. So men already see us up here. They have put us on a pedestal because we can do very special things. And the things we can do have been downplayed by feminism. It's been told it's worthless, it's not valuable. Yes, I am talking about procreating and having children.
There's more to it than that. I think, women have greater attention to detail on average, and, better organizers. I know this sounds like a pejorative and a negative, but better organizers of homes in general. Yes, there are very clean men, etc. But women just have I think on average, are just better at that. And it's somehow, as she's mentioning, this is somehow degraded. Where men do better in certain environments, rugged environments, right? The deep sea fishermen, the lumberjacks, etc. We do better in that. Therefore, we excel at that. But why is that degraded if a woman, it's praised if a woman wants to do it, but a guy who's, and again, when you put the reverse on there, if you put a guy in the home, is really the sexual attraction I know that there's a lot of women who are married to these type of guys. Are they really animalistically sexually attracted to this guy when they're done doing their boss chick work, coming home from a long commute, sitting in traffic, whatever, and they just run in the house and they just can't wait to throw themselves at the guy who's in an apron? Is that what's going on here? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Are all the way up here. We are on a pedestal in the manosphere because we can do the thing. We are all the way up here. We are on a pedestal in the manosphere because we can do the thing that men can't do. And we are the keys. My fiance says this all the time. We are the keys to immortality. We can carry on life, okay? If women disappear, men, their family trees die. Without women, their family trees die. Women are responsible for carrying on.
She mentioned the manosphere, yes, and she's acknowledging it, right? We need each other. I mean, you got to stop this craziness. So I'm glad that she's mentioned. I really want to let her cook, but I mean, I got to break it up but she's really doing something here. She's really saying something. I'm glad that she's doing it.
Carrying on family trees. Without women, their family trees die. Women are responsible for carrying on family trees. So my family has been in America for 15 plus generations at this point. Who am I to decide that my happiness is worth ending 15 plus generations of living and building and working in this country? Who am I?
Such a great question. I never thought about it like that, but I've always thought it was selfish to say, and I work with people. I remember this one guy I worked with, and he said, like, I don't want to have kids. I thought that was the most selfish, and it was probably the first time I've ever really heard it or maybe processed it. I don't want to have kids. And he doesn't, to this day, he and his wife don't have kids to this day, to my knowledge. Well, he's older than me, so I'm sure he doesn't. And just so selfish. It's just so, to me, it's just so selfish just to say, I'm going to stop the bloodline, stop the lineage. Rather just travel the world and just be selfish rather than continue to procreate. I just think that that's such a selfish mindset.
15 plus generations of living and building and working in this country. Who am I to decide that? Like, when you put it into that perspective, it's just like, oh my gosh, even you can go past that. Everyone who exists today in one variation or another has survived wars, has survived plagues, like the Black Death. I think a third of Europe was wiped out in the Black Death, right? We've survived, squabbles and mishaps in town. Like, there's a big flood here over the weekend in Texas. Like, almost 100 people at this point have died in an instant. And the floodwaters, if you've watched the videos, the floodwaters, in a matter of seconds, life and death, instantaneous, right? And so things like that, everyone who exists today has survived that. Childbirth wasn't exactly easy. So the fact that our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers and back have been able to carry the line on shows that we survived. How many of your ancestors and my ancestors, they had 5 kids and 3 of them died in childbirth, or 3 of them died in childhood, right? Like, the fact that we have survivor bias, like, we survived today over thousands and millions of years, and women just want to throw that away, right? And so what women don't realize, and I say this as a former feminist who has, come to see the error of my ways.
Former feminist who's come to see the error of her ways. Yeah, she's cooking.
So what women don't realize, and I say this as a former feminist who has, come to see the error of my ways. Women are trying to elevate themselves to the level of men without recognizing that to be equal to men and at parity with men means reducing themselves and reducing their value and how men actually see them. So it's quite reductionist. It's not actually aspiring to be better.
She's really articulating the red pill manosphere talking points to a great level and degree. In the attempt to make yourself more valuable, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to men. I have a career, I have a degree, yada, yada, yada. You're actually doing the exact opposite, particularly for strong alpha men. You're making yourself the exact opposite of what they're looking for. She's articulating it to such a high level. It's just ridiculous. I hope that ladies will really understand this, but it is what it is at this point.
Actually see them. So it's quite reductionist. It's not actually aspiring to be better, because at least like the men I've talked to and like stuff I've consumed online and content coming from guys, they carry a lot of pressure. They carry a lot of pressure and burden of the world and responsibility and duty. And I don't know a single man who's like, I wish women would carry this too. Maybe there are. I mean, maybe now because of feminism and how jaded guys are, maybe they do. But I think the majority of men want the responsibility and the dignity and the respect and the honor of providing for and taking care of a family. And women have denied them of that. And that's part of the reason why they're stepping away from relationships too, because to be in a relationship means to bring something to the table. And if women aren't willing to play the old school gender role of being a mom and a wife, if they're not willing to play those roles, there's nothing to offer for men. Men don't want another coworker, a live-in founder. They don't want a roommate. They can get all of those things themselves. They want the thing they can't get. And that is the ability to procreate, to carry on their legacy, and the ability to serve and protect a family. So unless women are willing to meet men to give them that honor and that responsibility, men are opting out. And that's the reason why women like this are like, oh, well, there's no good options available. Like, you have completely emasculated men. And then because your standards are so absurdly high, ridiculously high, you can't find anyone that is willing to pander to your delusions, pretty much. Okay. So the same unmarried woman who was 40, she talks about the typical feminist talking point about, when my mother was 10 years old, when the law was passed that women could access credit cards, so you could get credit cards in their own names. And then before that, your father, your brother, your husband had to sign on your Okay, there's two things to comment on here. So with
I'm going to fast forward this a little bit. You can go watch the original thing. She's going to talk about credit cards. While it's interesting, I don't want to, I'm at 30 minutes here, and I don't want my video to be too much longer than hers as a reaction video.
I guarantee you a woman could go get a mortgage or a loan or whatever based on her.
Yeah. She breaks that down. She does a good job, but I think I want to kind of get to the end of this here, because that part that we just played about making yourself less valuable and then you can't find anybody on your level. That was it for me. But there's something else I want to get to.
Would have been a better conversation, a better podcast episode if they actually had a man to offer his take on what's going on, and they actually gave men a platform and a seat at the table to share what they're going through. But she says, so I do think that many young men are facing a very real crisis of purpose, and they feel like society doesn't need them. Of course they do, because for the last several decades, that's all feminists have told them, that they're worthless, that they have no value, that they're not needed, right? And feminist women are making more, have better education, have more career opportunities, because, oh, by the way, DEI jobs typically go to white college-educated women. Funny how that works. They're opting out because there's no purpose. Like, they're being edged out by the very women who are competing with them. So women who they should be courting to become wives are now competing with them in all facets of life, and men are just tired of it. So they don't want to deal with it. And she talks about, they've heard that they're the problem, their masculinity is toxic.
Women who they should be trying to court to be wives are in competition with them in the job. And you think that the guy wants to marry that.
And so, I think they're looking for answers, and that's understandable in many ways. We're seeing many of them defect from the Democratic Party en masse at the same time that women are much more likely to identify as liberal. And I think that is absolutely true. So it's not so much, again, that women can't find men to marry. It's that their politics and their values and their beliefs are not aligned with the things that men want.
Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward this. I don't want to steal all of her content here, but she's gonna focus on one lady here, and then we'll end it off with her focusing on one lady here, and we'll end it off here.
And how Andrew Tate's of the world are contributing to the manosphere, but they have a woman's sphere, and they're not willing to let their feminist narrative be challenged in any way. So I want to close by calling attention to this woman. Her name is Katie Kirsch. She was in the original piece, and she is the one who commented that dating is the only thing you can put 10,000 hours into and end up right where you started. So I want to.
So she also, there's something at the bottom here that says,
her name is Katie Kirsch.
Katie Kirsch, who is 30, and something, the red line is right through it. Something in New York City ramped up down her search for a husband after many of the men she dated either seemed turned off by her ambition or weren't career-oriented enough. So the guys she's running into weren't career-oriented enough, right? Because they want families, right? They're not willing to work, 10, 12, 14 hours a day and, travel all around the country because they want a wife. Or they were just completely turned off because she didn't want to be a wife, right? So yeah, so they're not looking for that. She's looking for a partner. These guys are looking for wives. I can't remember. I can't see what else. Something. She's 30 years old. Oh yeah, she runs a leadership startup coaching. 30 years old with a leadership startup coaching startup. What at 30 do you know about leadership coaching? Because you have an MBA, you think you have that qualifies you to do anything? It's ridiculous. Listen, I got a PhD in leadership, and I spent 24 years, 24 years in the police department, 19 years as a supervisor. It's just crazy. These people, right? And she's going to talk about these jobs. If I didn't play it, she's either going to talk about it or I skipped over it. But she talks about these BS degrees that these women are getting. She mentions this Amanda Poole, Carpool. She mentions that.
Her name is Katie Kirsch. She was in the original piece, and she's the one who commented that dating is the only thing.
Excuse me, Amanda Claypool. She's the one. She's going to talk about it, right? So let me rewind this here.
Not willing to let their feminist narrative be challenged in any way. So I want to close by calling attention to this woman. Her name is Katie Kirsch. She was in the original piece, and she's the one who commented that dating is the only thing you can put 10,000 hours into and end up right where you started. So I want to introduce you to Katie Kirsch because, of course, she's on LinkedIn. So Katie Kirsch, right off the bat, she's a founder. She's ex-Stanford, Harvard MBA, and Forbes 30 under 30. Okay, if you know anything about Forbes 30 under 30, those are all a bunch of narcissists who self-promote themselves. It's not like the Nobel Prize Committee where, like, you work decades towards something, you're not expecting to get it, and, like, someone recommends you for it. Like, you recommend yourself for Forbes 30 under 30, and it's like this dick measuring contest for founders and people who seem to think that are important. Okay, she's based in San Francisco. It looks like she relocated to New York, so she's in New York. Okay, so this is her experience. So she's a co-founder of a coaching company. There you go. Okay, again here, another founder, Harvard. I don't know what this means, but okay, per her MBA product, I have no idea what that means. I didn't do anything in tech. She was an adjunct lecturer. She was in this business. She was a co-founder. Okay. So right off the bat.
Adjunct lecturer, what? Teaching what at 30 years old? You just got your degree last week. But it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And this particular lady she's got the connections, obviously. It's crazy. Crazy.
All you see here is girl boss, girl boss, girl boss. So she's co-founded this 501c3 with some Stanford friends, and she has been working nonstop building her own company since then. So you go down, her education is Harvard Business School and Stanford University, and I don't know what the Castillo School is. But right off the bat, her hypergamy is real. Women want to pursue relationships with men who are higher than them. But what women don't realize is by pursuing these degrees themselves, they've shrunk the pool of available matches that are in the market. So if only like 2% of applicants or 3% of applicants get into Harvard, and of those, a substantial portion you're not going to want to date for a variety of reasons. Could be cultural fit. There's a lot of international students who are at Harvard. Maybe you don't want an international student. Just getting along with people, a lot of competition, values don't align, what you want to pursue after, Harvard. There's a myriad, obviously things that go into relationships. But if you are a Stanford and Harvard alum, you're going to only look for other alum of that caliber. And there are far fewer men that have been educated in those schools than the broader culture itself, and the broader society. So problem number one is this woman has a small pool of candidates to look for. Okay, clearly though, she's obsessed with her startup. She's obsessed with, she's all into like the San Francisco VC world, right? And so her LinkedIn profile says everything you need to know about this woman. And she complains that she has put 10,000 hours into it and she's ended up right where she started. Her resume says otherwise. Her resume says that she is obsessed with herself, obsessed with her career, and that's what she's prioritized. So the outcomes are what you prioritize, right? If you want to lose weight and all you do is eat donuts and high carb meals and pasta and brownies and cookies, you're not going to gain weight, or you're not going to lose weight. You're just going to probably gain weight, right? Like, you have to look at what your actions are and what your daily habits are. If this woman prioritizes relationships, but she's not, she talks about prioritizing relationships, but her actions say otherwise, she's clearly not prioritizing a relationship. Like for me, I prioritized a relationship. So guess what I did? I packed up my life and I moved halfway across the country to find that relationship. Like, it was a priority for me. So I left where I was and I went somewhere else to find it. Clearly, a woman like this, competing with thousands, if not millions of other women like her in New York, she's not going to find, she's looking for a needle in a haystack. And within that needle, she's looking for someone who fits very specific parameters, who are willing to accept her lifestyle and overcome the hypergamy that she has handicapped herself with. And she even talks about it here. She's ramped down her search for a husband after many of the men she dated either seemed turned off by her ambition or weren't career oriented enough for her. And again, not everyone wants to be a power couple, because if you've watched House of Cards or any other cultural depiction of power couples, it doesn't always end well, does it?
You said something I want to go back
and again,
to.
Are willing to accept her lifestyle. And
she said something I want to go back to.
That relationship. Like, it was a priority for me. So I left where I was and I went somewhere else to find it. Clearly, a woman like this, competing with thousands, if not millions of other women like her in New York, she's not gonna find, she's looking for a needle in a haystack, and within that needle, she's looking for someone who fits very specific parameters, who are willing to accept her lifestyle and overcome the hypergamy that she has handicapped herself with. And she even talked—
overcome hypergamy that she handicapped herself with. Wow. Wow. So listen, I mean, listen, you ladies are certainly open and welcomed to live any type of life that you want, but you got to understand that the more you move up, your pool shrinks, and guys aren't the type of guy in particular that you more than likely are looking for, particularly the masculinity piece. You might have some guy who's like, yeah, okay, we'll do this, that, and the other. You might. I understand now that some surgeons are looking for other surgeons, or doctors looking for other doctors, etc. But at the core of it, do you like that person's values and their masculinity? I don't know. I mean, that's up for you all to decide. But she said the hypergamy that she has handicapped herself with. That's a powerful statement.
Talks about it here. She's ramped down her search for a husband after many of the men she dated either seemed turned off by her ambition or weren't career oriented enough for her. And again, not everyone wants to be a power couple, because if you've watched House of Cards or any other cultural depiction of power couples, it doesn't always end well, does it? And so she's just clearly, like, her priorities aren't aligned. So she's 30. She's a couple years younger than me. She looks like she's 40. No disrespect, but she looks older than she is. And it's clear, like, her priorities aren't aligned with finding a husband. And so this is why this is problematic from a journalist narrative perspective, and why I wanted to call attention to this, because stories like this, written by individuals like this, having conversations with panelists like this, are all spewing the same narrative, and it's a self-reinforcing belief, and none of these people are willing to acknowledge that they are the problem. They have created a narrative around what relationships are supposed to be like based only on talking about women. They perpetuate myths and talking points about feminism without even diving in or even being curious enough to dive into the historical context. Like, okay, why is it that women didn't have credit cards? Seriously, ask that. Like, why has no feminist asked that? They just focus on the talking point, and they're not like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't culturally necessary. And a decade or two from now, most of us aren't going to have driver's licenses. You know why? We're going to have cyber cabs and autonomous vehicles that take us everywhere. And so the concept of going to the DMV and having a driver's license is going to be abnormal, because it's not going to be needed anymore. So in the past, things were different. And it wasn't like, oh, you're a woman, therefore we're going to handicap you. Things were different. And just clearly, like, women prioritize, career girl boss women are prioritizing things that are very self-serving, and they're very narcissistic. And so I think until women are willing to give men a seat at the table and listen to them, until they're willing to challenge the narratives they've believed about how they exist in the world and their relationship with men, and until women are willing to change their expectations and prioritize actions that align with finding partners and starting families and meeting men at the table to provide something of value, I don't think women are going to find, I don't think they're gonna find relationships. Men are opting out, men are done. They don't want any part of this anymore. And so this is gonna create a world of hurt for women. And they're so focused on themselves right now in this moment, living their 20s, living their 30s, maybe their 40s, that they're not thinking about what this looks like decades down the road. So where are you gonna be when you're menopausal, you can't have kids anymore, you're single, you're childless, cat lady? What happens when all your girlfriends start dying? What happens when you're retired? What happens when when you reach the top of your career and you don't have anywhere else to go? What happens? Like, are you going to be satisfied? Are you going to be happy? Maybe. But at some point, like, that's fleeting. You have, like, the purpose of life, and I think the joy of life.
I'll leave it off right there. They don't care. I hear what she's saying, and she has an ability to be forward thinking about this, but these ladies don't care. A lot of them don't care. They'd rather have the bag today. They'd rather show their butts on Instagram. They'd rather do OnlyFans today. They'd rather be girl bosses. They'd rather do all that, whatever they're doing, in order to not need men or whatever. They just don't care. So I did skip over a little bit of it. I don't want to steal all of her content. Go over to her channel, give her a like. As I'm watching this now, the views are growing on the channel. A lot more likes are coming in. So I think that this video is going to definitely hit the manosphere space. So I want it to be, instead of always being last in responding to it, I want it to be one of the first. So I'm going to drop this. Let me know your thoughts or your opinions. You think she's right on about this? And I'm going to, if she watches this playback, I'd certainly love to have a conversation with you, Amanda Claypool, about this type of content and what you're seeing, what you've experienced, and why you moved, and all that kind of stuff. I may actually reach out to you if I can find your email. So best wishes on this new channel that you got going on. This was a great video, and to my viewers, make sure you hit the like button here. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Much love and peace.